Welcome back, guys. Hopefully you've been keeping well. It's been a while. Hopefully you have thoroughly digested the previous chapter. Anyways, let's jump into it. Chapter 4, make sure you got your trusty highlighter ready. We Agnostics. What do you think about that? What comes to mind when you think about agnostics? And why does it say we? I would guess, I might even suggest that it's saying that anybody who comes to AA is at a place of being an agnostic. Because if they did actually have that wholehearted belief in their creator, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, whatever it is, they would be able to connect with that power that would enable them not to drink. So, maybe you're an agnostic, yet to be a believer. Hold on to your disbelief right now, my friends, as we dig in. Here we go. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope you have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer, right? So that's the emphasis around the connection that's going to elevate you from your illness. To one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. But to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. I can tell you from my own experience, not even close to being an easy decision. Well worth it though. Keep in mind, I'm not doing this for any other reason but to serve you, right? It's not like I'm getting paid for this. It's not like I'm doing this out of a place of feeling that shame or guilt's going to come my way. I'm doing this because I know it creates freedom in me, right? That I want to share with you. I want to share with you whether you're living in Singapore or South Africa, South America, it doesn't matter. It's universally applicable. It's like cognitive behavioral therapy, but from 1939. Anyways, back to it. But it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were exactly of that type, meaning agnostic or atheist. That some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against we were not true alcoholics. How many people thought about that? I sure did. I didn't want to be an alcoholic. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life, or else. Face the fact. We must find a spiritual basis of how to live life. Perhaps it is going to be that way with you. But cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheists or agnostics, but our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted. If a mere code of morals or better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, right? This is talking about moral character. For me, I was incredibly full of integrity. I was trustworthy. That wasn't an issue for me, right? I thought that I could smart myself out of it. Didn't work. Many of us would have recovered long ago, but we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might. But the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed us utterly. I'll get you guys to highlight that. Please and thank you. Lack of power. Lack of power. Lack of power. As humans, we lack the power. We feel that we know how to calculate every single variable when it comes to everybody else's life that we interact with. And we feel that we can determine what the outcome is going to be. And we crave it. We're desperate for it. We don't want to let go and let life unfold, the universe to play its own card for us. We want to be the demigod of our own lives. That's our dilemma. We had to find a power which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how will we define this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main objective, or main object, is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. How clear-cut is that? Its main objective, or object, is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. Addiction, alcoholism, whatever you want to call it, suffering. And that's why we're here, right? I want you guys to suffer less. I want you to operate in something that's going to remove from something you're not even aware exists, a suffering inside of you that you do not know how to get rid of, but you're well aware of its power on you. AA can help you with that. Back to it. That means we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we're going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times, we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. For we have reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. We know how he feels, right? We know how it feels. I know how it feels. We have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Abso-fucking-lutely. Huge doubt and prejudice when I came into the program. I grew up Catholic. Some of us have been violently anti-religious. I was almost there, to tell you the truth. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance at many individuals who claimed to be godly. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who can comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet, in other moments, we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, right? That's what we're here for. We're not here about feeling good and rah, pump up. We're here for results. It's pragmatic. I don't waste my time. I'm incredibly impatient. My time is very, very valuable. I'm very black and white thinker, right? I would not be doing this for years upon years unless I got results, right? So let's underline that. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results. Even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Don't trip up on God. You can GOD, group of drunks. You can say group of doctors. You could say, gosh, there's so many different ways, different acronyms. This is just a word. Do you even know if God wants to be called God? How do you know God doesn't want to be preferred to be called Zimbabwe? Well, it doesn't matter. Don't get caught up on letters or what the focus needs to be is on the power. It needs to be on the relationship. Please, please, please do not get caught up in all that is that word. We want relationship, that to be the thing where you put your attention. All right. Much to our relief, we discovered We did not need to consider another's conception of God, right? Forget about everything else. I had to forget about all of my Catholicism. Forget about all the things I saw in the news. I needed to dig into spiritual stuff myself. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make our approach and to effect a contact with him, right? However inadequate was our sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. So that's saying it doesn't matter how ignorant we are or how stupid we think we are. It doesn't matter. That willingness is the key that's going to open the door for that connection to flow in. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, spirit of the universe, underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided, right, we get these benefits provided we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him, right? Seek him. That's part of this transactional, pragmatic approach. You're giving and receiving. It's a relationship. If you want to have a closeness with your buddy, you go golfing with them every single week. If you want to feel close with your partner, you go out for dinners. You compliment them. You're intimate with them on many different levels. You know, you're investing energy, time, money so that you have that connection. And that's the same thing you're doing with something that's going to be a little bit more power, though, than your wife or friend or colleague. To us, the realm of the spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive, or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men. Think about it. You're getting caught up on God. Guess what? They've got an option for you. Call God creative intelligence. Call God spirit of the universe. Call God the totality of things. Call God the realm of spirit. Get caught up and tripped up on something else. Don't waste your time on trying to define something you've yet to really fully understand. I'm not trying to be here to criticize. You know what? You may be a rabbi. You may have spent 2 decades understanding scripture. The knowledge, my friends, this content is wonderful. The application, that is what we're doing here, right? Let's see if this thing's still in focus. Okay, good. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God, however inadequate. Remember, guys, this is going to grow. You're going to define your connection. I'm not going to tell you how to experience God. God's going to reveal. That spirit of the universe is going to reveal itself to you on God's time, not me. I'm just at a place to be the place where I hope to enable you to experience that connection quicker than if you were going to do or go about it yourself, especially as an alcoholic or an addict. I believe this is universally applicable whether you have a problem with alcohol or not. Keep that in mind. This applies to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let, come on guys, let's focus on this, prejudice, contempt. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you. What do you want me to be deterred from? Honestly asking yourself what they mean or what they mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to affect our first conscious relation with God as we understood him. Afterwards, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited, right? Doesn't matter. However limited your conception. Doesn't matter. You start. It's going to grow. I assure you it's going to grow. I assure to you, just as this pen is going to fall out of my hand into the book because of gravity. I don't understand gravity totally. I'm not a scientist. Gravity exists. I don't understand it. God exists. I don't fully understand it. My relationship with God most certainly has grown, and yours will too. As you'll come across in recovery, you'll have many, countless people expressing the same sort of sentiments, right? We need to ask ourselves one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself, right? It's just a willingness, guys. Am I willingness? There is a power greater than yourself. What is it? Like, what does that hurt you? Do you want to be God? If you're having resistance there, maybe ask yourself that question. Maybe you don't want God to be existing. Maybe it's you want to be the God of your own life. Did you create yourself? Grab your two fingers. Put them up to your neck. You feel that heartbeat? What do you have to do with that? Are you making a heartbeat? Where's this life come from? Where's the energy to make the blood flow through your heart? And I sure don't do anything about mine. I'm just beating. I'm just here. I'm existing. Think about it. As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been reportedly proven, guys, listen, proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. Remember, guys, we're here about facts. We're not here about feelings and rah, pump up. We want to see results. Or else, as I said, as along with millions of other people, we would not continue to come back to these rooms if it wasn't a place of being pragmatic. It would be a waste of our life. Why would we want to associate with people like this if it wasn't useful and beneficial to us in some capacity? That was great news to us, for we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has. I am sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes. But I cannot accept as surely true that many articles of faith which are so plain to him. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. Besides, the seeming inability to accept much on faith, get that in focus, sorry guys. We often found ourselves handicapped. Listen, guys, I can't even emphasize this enough. We find ourselves handicapped. How strong of a wording is that? We found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, defiance. Fuck you, don't tell me how to live my life. Who do you think you are telling me that I need to do X, Y, and Z? That's my attitude. That's how I'm wired. I'm very defiant. That's my nature. I'm extremely sensitive. And often my first place is go to a place of doubt when people are showing me new things. I'm very skeptical. Instead of just accepting things as they are, I always feel that people are trying to pull the wool over me. There's a paranoia inside of me that basically caused me to be at a place of judgment and doubt towards my brothers and sisters instead of love, right? What I found out is most people don't give a fuck, and they don't have time to be investing to always screw me over. The world is not working against me as I once thought, guys. You'll find that for yourself too. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned, guys. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. Get rid of it. Though some of us resisted, we found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with the alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. That's my hope for you guys. I don't want you to be at a place where you're holding such contempt to something that costs you nothing, that is going to create for you more freedom for you to do other wonderful things with your time. Forget about all the money that you can make with this extra time and happiness you have. I'm not asking anything of you. I want to provide for you a way of life that creates more abundance, if you will, more freedom, more happiness. That's all I'm asking. I believe that's an exponential resource for other people to feel too. Once you start feeling the vibe that I'm feeling, you'll want other people to feel it too, because you want everybody to be at a place of vibing this way. I don't want people to be suffering. What's that going to do for me? That's going to put people in a place of energy of trying to defend themselves all the time. Right? That's not how I want to interact with my community, people in a place of defense like I was for years. I want them to feel at peace. I want them to be happy. I want them to be open. All right. Though some of us resisted, let's go, guys, we found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with alcoholic destruction, guys. Sometimes, Jesus, the reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than themselves. We think there are good reasons. Let us have a look at some of them. The practical individual of today is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century as readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact. You guys like fact? So do I. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes that without a murmur of a doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. Everybody nowadays believes in sources of assumptions for which there is good evidence, but no perfect visual proof. And does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? It is being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world that the outward appearances are not inward reality at all. To illustrate, the prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at an incredible speed. These tiny, let's get this back in focus. Good. These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. When, however, the perfectly logical assumptions suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, there's an all-powerful guiding creative intelligence. Right there, our perverse streak comes to the surface, and we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. How about that, guys? Right? We laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't true. We don't want to accept it. We want to fight it and tell somebody else they're lying to us. It's bullshit. We don't go to a place that's just being like, oh, okay, interesting. We read wordy books, indulge in windy arguments, thinking we believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, proceeds nowhere. Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostic and atheists choose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end of all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it? We, who have traveled the dubious path, I'm begging you guys to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religions. Can you fucking believe that? I was anti everything. I didn't have a good experience growing up Catholic. It wasn't something that stuck in my heart. I'm sure you had your own issues around pain, suffering when it comes to conflict and beliefs. Oh, now I'm at a place I'm begging you to lay aside your prejudice about God, connections with a higher power, whatever you want to call it, even organized religions. Can you believe it? We have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices when we might have observed that many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness which we should have sought ourselves. Can you relate to that? Do you got lots of stability in your life? You got lots of happiness? Are you feeling really useful? You feeling like you got lots of purpose? Probably not. I sure as fuck didn't feel that way. Felt like I didn't want to be alive, let alone being at a place of vibing in life. Thank God for AA. Holy, save my ass. Next page. Instead, we looked at human defects of these people and sometimes used their shortcomings as a basis of wholesale condemnation. We talked of intolerance, while we were intolerant ourselves. We missed the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. We never gave the spiritual side of life fair hearing. How about that, guys? I told myself that I did. Bullshit. I did no investigation. I maybe read a couple pages of the Bible. I never read the whole thing. I never gave anything a full investment of time in seeking. I just like to pretend like I was the smartest guy in the room, even though I didn't really do the push-ups to understand all this stuff. Maybe read a couple books that gave summaries of their experiences, but I never looked and seeked myself. In our personal stories, you will find a wide variation in the ways each teller approaches and conceives of the power greater in power which is greater than himself. Whether we agree with a particular approach or conception seems to make little difference. Experience has taught us that these are matters about which, for our purpose, we need not be worried. They are questions for each individual to settle for himself. On one proposition, however, these men and women are strikingly agreed. Every one of them has gained access to and believes in a power greater than himself. This power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. As celebrated American statesmen put it, let's look at the record. Here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. They flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take certain attitude toward that power, and to do certain simple things, there's been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. Look at the record, he says. He's not talking about feelings. He wants to look at a record, proof, facts. Pragmatic approach, guys. Remember that. In the face of collapse and despair, in the face of total failure of their human resources, they found that a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. This happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements, guys. Focus. No free lunches, dude. We're doing this. We're doing spiritual push-ups here. We're doing almost like a transaction of your energy to connect to the greater energy, the greater force, right? This happened. Why? They wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements, steps, expectations of how we get to that will be made more aware as we continue, guys. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them when many hundreds of people are able to say that the conscious power and the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives. Guys, listen to that. People are able to say that the consciousness of that presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives. They present a powerful reason why one should have faith. Come on, guys. Fact. This isn't just emotion, guys. This is like much more than that. This world of ours has made more material progress in the last century than in all the millenniums which went before. And almost everyone knows the reason. Students of ancient history tell us that the intellect of men in those days was equal to the best of today. Yet in ancient times, material progress was painfully slow. The spirit of modern scientific inquiry, research, and invention was almost unknown. In the realm of the material, men's minds were fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. Some of the contemporaries of Columbus thought a round earth preposterous. Others came near putting Galileo to death for his astronomical heresies. We ask ourselves this: Are not some of us just as biased and unreasonable about the realm of the spirit as were the ancients about the realm of the material? Even in the present century, American newspapers were afraid to print an account of the Wright brothers' first successful flight at Kitty Hawk. Had not all efforts at flight failed before? Did not Professor Langley's flying machine go to the bottom of the Potomac River? Was it not true that the best mathematical minds had proven man could never fly? Had not people said, God had reserved this privilege to the birds? Only 30 years later, the conquest of the air was almost an old story, and airplane travel was in full swing. But in most fields, our generation had witnessed complete liberation of our thinking. Show any longshoreman a Sunday supplement describing a proposal to explore the moon by means of a rocket, and he will say, I bet they do it. Maybe not a lot song like this. This actually happened, guys. They went to the moon. Can you believe it? And he will say, I bet they do it. Maybe not so long either. Is not our age characterized by the ease with which we discard our old ideas for new? By the complete readiness with which we throw away the old theory or gadget which does not work for something new which does? We had to ask ourselves, why ourselves we shouldn't apply to our human. Let's go over that again. We had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. How about that, guys? Come on, guys. Absolutely, I was having issues with personal relations. Couldn't control my emotionals. For sure. We're a prey to misery and depression. Absolutely. Couldn't make a living? Absolutely. We had a feeling of uselessness? Absolutely. We were full of terrified all the time. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was not a basic solution of these bedevilments more important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was. When we saw others solve their problems by simple reliance upon a spirit of the universe, remember guys, don't call it God, spirit of the universe, creator, whatever it is, it's all going to change. Just that willingness, guys. Start. Give yourself an opportunity to be open-minded. We had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. Come on, guys. Let's do this. Still with me? Take a breath. The Wright brothers' almost childish faith that they could build a machine that would fly was the mainspring of their accomplishment. Without that, nothing could have happened. We agnostics and atheists were sticking to the idea that self-sufficiency would solve our problems. When others showed us that God's sufficiency worked with them, we began to feel like those who had insisted the Wright brothers would never fly. Logic was great stuff. We're not saying that using your rationale and logic is bad. They believe it's great. We liked it. We still like it. It is not by chance we were given the power to reason, to examine the evidence of our senses, and to draw conclusions. That is one of man's magnificent attributes. We agnostically inclined would not feel satisfied with a proposal which did not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation. Hence, we are at pains to tell why we think our present faith is reasonable, why we think it is more sane and logical to believe than not to believe, why we say our formal thinking was soft and mushy, when we threw up our hands in doubt and said, we don't know. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What's your choice going to be, guys? You think I'm going to waste all my time doing this? To push a question so firmly into your consciousness? Is the spirit of the universe real or is it not? Are you going to lay aside your disbelief for potentially experiencing a different vibe. Like, I'm not asking anything big of you. I'm just asking for a little willingness, guys. It's real. You're loved. Let's keep going. Arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of faith. We couldn't duck the issue. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason toward the desired shore of faith. The outlines and the promise of the new land had brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits. Friendly hands had stretched out in welcome. We were grateful that reason had brought us so far, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we had been leaning too heavily on reason, that last mile, and we did not like to lose our support. That was natural, but let us think a little more closely. Without knowing it, have we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? Or did we not believe in our own reasoning? Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we had been faithful, abjectly faithful to the God of reason. So, in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. We found, too, that we had been worshippers. What a state of mental goose flesh that used to bring on. Had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves? Absolutely, I did. And then, with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower? Who of us has not loved something or somebody? How much of these feelings, these loves, these worship have to do with pure reason? Little or nothing. We saw at last, were not these things the tissue out of which our lives were constructed? Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? It wasn't possible to say we had no capacity for faith or love or worship. In one form or another, we had been living in faith and little else. Imagine life without faith. We're nothing left but pure reason. It wouldn't be life. We believe in life. Of course we did. We could not prove life in the sense that you can prove a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points. Yet, there it was. Could we still say the whole thing was nothing but a mass of electrons created out of nothing, meaning nothing, whirling on to a destiny of nothingness? Of course we couldn't. The electrons themselves seem more intelligent than that. At least, so the chemist said. Hence, we saw that reason isn't everything. Neither is reason, as most of us use it, entirely dependable. Though it emanates from our best minds, what about people who prove that man could never fly? Yet, we had been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world. People who rose above their problems. They said that God made these things possible. And we only smiled. We had seen spiritual release, but liked to tell ourselves it wasn't true. Actually, we were fooling ourselves. For deep down, let's go guys, underline this. For deep down in every man and woman and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or another, it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstration of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. Come on, guys, let's get this bad boy done too. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was much as a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only that there he may be found, deep down within us, guys. It was so with us. We can only clear the ground a bit If our testimony helps sweep away any prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to seek diligently within yourself, then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. In this book, you will read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist. His story is so interesting that some of it should be told now. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. Our friend, make sure you're in focus there, guys. Our friend was a minister's son. He attended church school where he became rebellious at what he thought was an overdose of religious education. For years thereafter, he was dogged by trouble, frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Post-war disillusionment, ever serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse, brought him to the point of self-destruction. One night, when confronted in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Our friend Gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I've ever known are wrong? What do you think, guys? Is that possible? How many hundreds of millions of people, Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, can they all be wrong? Can every single one of them be wrong about their connection, relationship with God, spirit of the universe, universal intelligence, creator? Can they all be wrong? No matter how smart and rich you think you are, there's still going to be someone who's smarter and better off and maybe knows a little bit more than you. Can every single hundreds of millions of these people be wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he is overwhelmed by a conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from the bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his Creator. Thus was our friend's cornerstone fixed in place. No later vicissitude has shaken it. His alcoholic problem was taken away. That very night, years ago, he disappeared. Save for 100 brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned. And at such times, great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly, he could not drink even if he would. God has restored his sanity. What is this but a miracle of healing? Yet its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. He humbly offered himself to his Maker. Then he knew. Even so has God restored us all to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly. That's been my experience, guys. But he has come to all who have honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. Let's get this highlighted. Okay, guys, great job. Good reading. Take a breath. Go back over any points in here. Write comment section, any questions you have. Get at me at Instagram at Growth Guided. Like, share, subscribe. Let your brothers and sisters know they don't have to suffer. And you can listen to this anywhere. Much love. Talk to you soon.